Hi, I'm FIDE Master Livy Cherbolenko, and in this series I explore the typical mistakes of people rated anywhere between 1000 and 2000. This is a first reaction, no engine analysis of a chess.com gameplay between 1158 versus 1186. Let's see. e4, e5, knight f3 attacking the e5 pawn, knight c6 defending the pawn, developing the knight, bishop c4. So this is called the Italian opening, or gioco piano as well, right? Bishop c4, white simply develops, won a castle, also puts pressure on f7. Knight f6. There are normally two ways to respond to the Italian. Black can either play knight f6, which is called the two knights defense, or black can start with bishop c5. I recommend actually bishop c5, because knight f6, there might be some crazy lines like knight g5, attacking f7, and after d5, ed. Here black needs to find a good move, knight a5. Otherwise, if they play knight d5, white can play knight f7, sacrifice, king takes f7, queen f3. Attack against the king, attack against the knight. If king g8, simply bishop d8, basically with checkmate. And if king d6, white can play knight c3, put further pressure against the knight. Let's say black goes knight e7, white can just castle. White is down a piece, but white has huge compensation, because although black is up a piece, the king is in the center, all his pieces are super passive, he's all pinned down, right, the knight's pinned, and next white can make moves like rook e1, d4, put pressure on the e file, perhaps next bishop g5, pin the second knight, right, to the queen, rook h3 d1, and so white will definitely regain the piece with interest. Alright, so this I would not recommend, so you need to know here knight a5, let's say bishop b5 check, c6, takes, bishop d3, and this might lead to a bit weird position where I think white is up a pawn, but black has some better development. White has these weird pieces, this bishop is blocked, and black gets some compensation. So this is a bit irrational, so I would not recommend this, because you need to know a lot of theory. The problem with knight f6 is it blocks the queen, and the queen no longer defends the g5 square, so white can play knight g5, and again, there's no easy way to defend d5. Versus if we start with bishop c5 first, white cannot play knight g5, because the queen can just take. And if white plays it next move, let's say white plays, I don't know, d3, yeah, and next knight g5. The thing is, black can just play now knight f6, and now because the bishop is no longer on f8 but on c5, after knight g5, white can just castle, and now the rook guards. And usually two minor pieces are better than a rook and a pawn in the middle game, because although point-wise is the same as like 6 points in both cases, but white has two pieces. Two pieces are better than one piece. So that's why knight f7 is not good for white now, because black would have two pieces for a rook and a pawn, which is better to have two pieces. So that's why, yeah, I'd recommend bishop c5 here, not knight f6. But alright, knight f6 with two nice defense. d3, okay, so white did not go for knight g5. Yeah, d3 is also fine. Let's see, bishop c5 now. Okay, so it basically just transposed to the normal bishop c5 variation, gioco piano. Okay, bishop c5, bishop g5, white pins the knight to the queen. Okay, h6 attacking the bishop, alright, bishop h4, maintaining the pin. g5, Okay, so black plays quite aggressively. There is this advanced idea that black could have implemented here, which is h6. First make the bishop determine which diagonal he wanna go, and then after bishop h4, now bishop back to e7. This might look a bit counterintuitive, but this pin is annoying, right? It's very annoying pin, so bishop e7 unpinning the knight. And then black can just like play, let's say white castles, then black can just play like d6, let's say some move, I don't know, c3 or something, castles, and I don't know, let's say knight bd2. And now, first of all, now there's no more any real pin, so black can just continue developing, or he can move his knight, let's say, I don't know, maybe like knight h7 or knight h5, for example, and then like knight f4, trade the bishops, right, and escaping the pin. And then also white has this weak f4 square. It's just that black needs to be careful, because sometimes white has tactics like knight takes c5 and then queen h5. So black needs to be careful, but otherwise knight h5, knight f4 is pretty good, or putting the knight somewhere else, or not even moving it at all, because the knight is no longer really pinned. And so, but you should not start with bishop e7 immediately, because if you play bishop e7, let's say white plays castles, and when you play h6, Now white, seeing that you have played bishop e7, doesn't need to go to h4, but he'll just like go back to e3, let's say, right? And then you just put your bishop on a passive square and lost this diagonal, right? So that's why we first need to make him commit. If he goes to h4, this is when bishop e7, and now this bishop is quite bad here, right? When bishop e7 is like a compromise. You put your bishop on a more passive diagonal, but so is white's bishop. But if you go somewhere back, then there is no reason, like here, let's say, there's no more reason to put it back to e7. You can just play d6 and leave it on this more active diagonal, all right? So black could have applied this more risk-free idea with bishop e7, but black instead decided to play g5, which is a bit risky, but sometimes we do play this. Let's see, so knight g5, yeah, very, very interesting. Although, yeah, knight g5, yeah, interesting. I mean, bishop g3 would be another move, obviously, attacking the pawn, d6, and then maybe, I don't know, maybe like h4 or something. Yeah, maybe like h4. Typical idea, putting pressure. Although I think black should be fine here. Black can just play like g4, attacking the knight. Say the knight moves somewhere, and then like knight h5. Let's say if white plays like, I don't know, let's say knight d2, for example, yeah. Then in these kind of positions, it's very key for black to play knight h5. It's a typical idea. Black should not play pawn h5, because this pawn is useless here, doesn't do much. Black should also not allow, let's say, some move, let's say a6 or something. Black should also not allow white to play h5, because then white has ideas like rook h4 potentially, or bishop h4, pinning the knight to the queen. Usually when you have these kind of structures, when there is one file apart, right, between two pawns, it's best to put a knight there. Because one, you block white from playing h5, right, and bishop h4, and two, your knight is very good, it puts pressure on the bishop, it may go to f4, and black already has here initiative, I think. So that's why, yeah, white needs to be careful. Maybe knight h2 to attack this pawn, not to allow, I don't know. But even then, black can play, like, at the very least, black can play, like, I don't know, maybe rook g8, and then knight h5, maybe even knight h5 immediately, yeah. So yeah, it's not so easy, so I'm not so sure about the h4 move here. Maybe when your opponent attacks like this on the side, it's usually best to strike in the center. So maybe here more sense would make c3 and then d4, right? Against a side attack, we respond with a central counter blow, right? So maybe c3, d4 would be good, opening up the center. So yeah, bishop g3, I guess, would have been interesting as well, followed by c3, right? But okay, let's see, knight g5, very interesting, yeah. Also actually a typical idea, but not always does it work. So let's see. Takes, alright, d6. D6, huh? Not so sure about this. I mean, first we should always look at tactics, but it doesn't seem to work. Bishop f2, just king f2 doesn't work. Of course, my initial idea was like knight e4. Sometimes there's like this idea, knight e4, bishop d8, bishop f2. The problem is this would have worked great if like the bishop was on f1, because then after king d2, right, it would have been knight d4 with checkmate. Like if the bishop was on f1, this is actually a common idea you want to remember. With a bishop on f1, you can sacrifice the queen. It's like a typical checkmate. The problem is here white can just play just king f1. So but again, black would have applied the same idea I told you about earlier, bishop e7. Put it back, unpin the knight, and then black can play d6, bishop e6, let's say, facing the c4 bishop. And now already there's no more real pressure against this knight. Like white can play, let's say, eventually queen f3, but again, the bishop and the queen is guarding the knight. And so the knight is well guarded, and white can also, like I said, black can also play d6, bishop e6, face this bishop which attacks f7, and then move this knight simply somewhere. Just move it and completely unpin. So yeah, I think bishop e7, or if not bishop e7, I mean, what else? Rook g8 also would have been fine, yeah, putting some pressure on the bishop. Maybe rook g8 first. Also then the bishop can, you know, go to g6, the rook can go to g6 and guard the knight additionally, right? So it also puts pressure on g2 if the bishop ever moves. So yeah, I think either rook g8 or bishop e7 would have been good. Instead, black decided to play d6. Yeah, I think this is probably a mistake. Cuts the diagonal off, you know, and like pin is still here. Maybe I can play like queen f3. Yeah, not so sure. Not so sure. Let's see. Knight c3. So white wants to play knight d5. Queen f3. I guess black had knight d4. Yeah. Even here. But let's see. If here has to take, takes. Now if knight d2 check, c2 check, king d2, and if knight a1, simply bishop h8. I mean, this is completely winning for white, right? White just runs the h pawn, and also this knight is lost basically after knight c3. This is completely winning for white. So maybe rook h6 here. But I mean, yeah, I can just maybe takes f3, and again, I think white has more pawns. Also should be big advantage for white, I guess. From what you see, white has more pawns. Yeah, so this actually knight d4 doesn't work then. Knight d4 doesn't work. So then, yeah, queen f3 then should be winning. Because how do they prevent me taking the knight? Yeah, I don't see. See, like I said, if rook was on g8, could have at least played rook g6. Yeah, I think this is, of course, completely winning, yeah. Alright, so I think white should have played queen f3. But okay, white played knight c3 instead. Bishop e6, makes sense. Alright, bishop e6, yeah, if knight d5, now black just takes with a bishop, yeah. Still maybe white can take here. Now knight e7 doesn't work because we just take. Knight d4, I mean, it's an unstable square, so we could like just attack it with c3, and let's say knight f5, queen f3, putting pressure on both knights, and white is fine. Actually, white should have big advantage, but I think black can just play knight here. Although when queen f3, putting pressure, knight bd7 guarding the knight, but then don't we have bishop b5? And next taking either here or here, depending how they play. Right, he has the f6 knight pinned to the queen and the d7 knight pinned to the king. So white should regain his piece. So yeah, I think knight d5 would still be fine. Would have still been fine. Yeah, I think knight d5 was a good move. So yeah, bishop e6 is a mistake. Why? Because for two reasons. One, we no longer can play knight d5, so this knight now makes no sense, has no moves. And two, we have opened black the f file, and so now he can play rook f8, not only attack our f2 pawn potentially, but also guarding his knight. After like queen f3, rook f8 guarding his knight. Or maybe he can even castle. Maybe even castle. And again, rook f8 would guard the knight. So yeah, bishop e6 is a mistake. Okay, white decides simply to castle. Alright. Rook g8, finally black realized the importance of this move. Bishop h. Although I'd say here maybe queen e7 would have been not bad, and then like castle long, and then queen h7 also attack h2. I think this would have been even stronger, right? Yeah, queen h7, and white is in big trouble. But okay, rook g8, bishop h4. Okay, queen e7 now block plays. All right, queen f3. Rook f8. Yeah. Okay. Rook f8. I mean, rook g6 would have been, I guess, fine. Rook g6, and then black can put the queen behind and put pressure on g7, or castle long, and then put the second rook on g8, and again pressure. I mean, yeah, pressure g2. So yeah, rook f8 looks a little bit passive, but all right. Knight b5. Okay. Finally, black castles long. Yeah, if black castles long, already the king is safe, and I don't think white has any chance. Okay, let's see a3. I guess white prepares b4. I'd say c3 with d4 or b4 would have made maybe a bit more sense, but okay. a3, a6 attacking the knight, knight goes back, knight d4 attacking the queen, queen d1, rook h8 attacking the bishop. Next, the second rook will come to g8, bishop g5, rook g8. Yeah, this is too bad, too bad. Okay, now look at black's rooks. Huge pressure against white's king. White's king basically has no defense, right? Basically, it's completely alone. Knight g4. Yeah, knight g4 should be good enough. Of course, there are many other moves, obviously. But okay, let's see, knight g4. Of course, there's like queen g7 attacking g2, queen h7 attacking h2. There's all sorts of sacrifices you should look at, like rook takes g2 sacrifice, and after king g2, queen g7. But you need to calculate if it works, because I'm not so sure it does work, but you still need to check. Or rook h2, and after king h2, queen h7 check, and then rook h8. You have to always look for this kind of moves, for this kind of sacrifices. But okay, knight g4 should be good enough. h3, all right. Knight e3. Well, another move would have been maybe rook takes h3. Again, sacrifice. We should always look for sacrifice. And then if gh, then knight e3 with check. And then black just takes the queen. So yeah, I think rook h3 would have been even stronger. And if white, let's say, plays b4 or something, black can just play like rook h1 check. Again, sacrifice. King takes h1, queen either h7 or h4. Let's say queen h4 check. King g1 and then queen h2 checkmate. But let's see. So black took on e3 instead. All right. Well, again, I think rook e3 would have been, rook h3 would have been stronger. But all right, takes. Queen g5 attacking e3 and g2. All right. Queen g4. Wait, this is obviously a big mistake. Probably should have played something like, I don't know, queen d2 or something. Yeah, but queen g4, queen e3 check, king h1, rook takes g4. Yeah, black simply wins the queen. White is completely lost. Okay, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.